So if I'm telling the story of me as an artist, that's gonna start when I was really young, probably like 4 years old, 4 or 5. And my aunt used to beatbox, and she was like super hip hopper, and she used to do turntables and stuff, and she'd beatbox. And
So sick.
yes, she's really cool. She's like a graphic designer in New York now. But
Okay.
she would do all that kind of stuff, and I started picking up on her beatboxing. And I would walk around the house when I was little, you know, beatboxing random stuff. And I ended up taking that pretty seriously into like middle school. And, you know.
Can you beatbox right now?
No, I'm not beatboxing.
Okay, go on.
So I was practicing, and, you know, I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. And, you know, a little bit before middle school, I remember my uncles, they had a rap group called the Rock Bottom Boys. And
Crazy.
yeah, they used to make music and do shows and stuff. And I got a CD of theirs, and I remember thinking to myself, like, hey, I could rap too. You know, I'm already beatboxing, rapping isn't too far off. And it was kind of like, oh, someone that's like me, you know, even my family is doing it, I can do it too. So I started writing verses, stuff here and there. And then, you know, I remember actually recording myself rapping on like this little handheld, you know, recorder thing, doing random stuff like that, you know, mixed with the beatboxing and just trying to be cool. And did that for a while. I didn't start taking it seriously, like as an artist, until probably around freshman year of high school. And during that time, I started like really thinking like, oh, I could do this as a career. And so, funny enough, you know, I ended up dropping out of high school so that I could work on my first mixtape, because I just didn't have enough time in the day to work on my mixtape. So I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I dropped school and finished that mixtape. It was still to this day, I think, one of the greatest decisions I ever made.
Crazy. Yes, you do believe that?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Well, I mean, it led me in a direction that I wouldn't have gotten, that I wouldn't have gone if I stayed in school. I think being able to hone my craft in a very intentional way is one of the ways that it benefited me. And then also I was open to experience like real life really early on. So while I did make a lot of bad decisions in those times, I also learned a whole lot about real life. And, you know, I think God did something in the midst of all that stuff that really brought me to where I'm at today. I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't do that.
You're a pretty unique individual. I'm sure that contributed a little bit to it.
Yeah, I got weird.
Yeah.
That's one thing for sure. Because after dropping out of school, I started, you know, getting into a whole different lifestyle. You know.
Sure, I can only imagine.
Not sports and, you know, grades anymore. It was,
dances. Yeah.
Drugs and music is what it became.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said that's when you first started taking music seriously.
Yeah.
And that was like what you said, like 50. When did you drop out?
Sophomore year. So I think I was about 15 years old. It was like in between 15 and 16, I believe.
And you finished an album.
Yep.
Under DeMarcus.
Under DeMarcus.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's still streamable.
It's still streamable, but only very few people get the info.
Yeah.
If you know, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not putting that out.
Cool. Yeah. I wouldn't ask. Okay, so then I mean, what if that's like a milestone artistically? What happened next? What's the next? Because there's usually, I mean, there's a lot to weed through, you know, and as I'm sure every artist knows, like in your journey, there's usually pretty, you know, pivotal times. That's the first one. What's the second one?
So I'm gonna shoot very quick.
Do it.
Because there's a whole you know, lifetime, it seems, of information that happened, you know, to that really show how the different stages of my artistry developed. But that first stage was me just wanting to be the best rapper I could be. You know, that was like my goal. With my second project, in between my first and second project, I started experimenting with psychedelics and stuff, you know. And growing up, I always had some kind of, you know, desire for the beyond. And, you know, I had an idea that God was real, and I didn't really know much. I didn't know what God was real. I just knew that there was a God, there was some kind of higher power, like, you know, a lot of people would say. And so I started experimenting with stuff, started experimenting with psychedelics, and my art, my music has always been a direct reflection of, you know, kind of like what I'm experiencing and my thoughts and stuff. So in the music, you know, I was talking about spiritual things and, you know, things of, you know, pulling in different theologies from different religions and stuff like that. And so to mind you, during this time, there's something behind my artistry that is happening that a lot of people don't know. So I grew up in a household that's like not religious at all. You know, my grandmother's Catholic, but she's like the kind of Catholic that's like, you know, she's Catholic.
Yeah.
Doesn't not like she's like super
committed
religious. She's just Catholic, you know. And that's probably like a horrible way to put it. I don't want to offend anybody at all.
Sure.
But there's a lot of, you know, religious people who they're religious by affiliation almost.
Sure.
And they, you know, they probably believe, but they're not like
in it,
you know. So that was all that I had. My grandma taught me how to pray when I was younger. And, you know, we would just do the Lord's Prayer, and now I lay me down to sleep, pray the Lord my soul to keep kind of prayers. But I was like, oh, we could talk to God. I didn't know what God it was. I didn't know if it was a Hindu God religiously. I didn't know if it was Buddhism, what kind of, you know, spirituality or God it was, but God. And when I started experimenting with psychedelics and stuff, I remember getting really interested in just like spirituality. And I was like, God, if you're there, if you're real, I remember praying this one time, like, I think I had done shrooms or something like that, mushrooms, and then the next day I had this like kind of like feeling like there's something going on. And I remember praying to God, if you're real, if you're there, I need you to show yourself to me, essentially. You know, it's not verbatim, but it's my sentiment behind the prayer. And nothing happened. You know, I didn't get any kind of answer, didn't get any kind of revelation. God didn't show himself to me or in any way. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go on my own way. I'm going to not really entertain this idea of God, especially not the idea of the God that my grandma gave me, because that's who I was kind of trying to talk to, you know? And so I just started experimenting in different drugs and different theologies, and, you know, I made music about it all. And during this time, you know, it's like I got this idea that I could change the world through music. And it's almost like this Messiah complex that started to develop, because I was experiencing all these incredible spiritual experiences, and, you know, I felt like the knowledge I had was, I could change the world with it, you know, and I could, you know, overthrow the government and all these religious, you know, industries and stuff like that. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to change the world with music. And I started to have this self-righteousness about me, all the while experiencing a deep corruption that was bubbling up through porn addictions, through, you know, being hateful to people in my family. I used to call my sister all types of names, and, you know, I was super disrespectful to any kind of authority, and, you know, started doing drugs and stealing from people, and it was just like a mess. But I was like trying to present myself as this righteous person that was like here to change the world, but everything was conflicting. And so things got a little bit dark, started getting real dark, you know, and no one would have known that necessarily unless you really paid attention to the music. It's there for sure. Like, you can tell I'm struggling, but a lot of people didn't know because I had an image to uphold, you know. So that's the next stage in my artistry. That's when Us Plus came around, for people who would know Us Plus. And Us Plus was like, you know, hire me, unity, us, plus positivity. It's like this kind of idea that, you know, we could have unity and change the world through positivity. It's basically essentially what it was. You know? But it was just like I was living double life. You know, I was like artist trying to change the world and be positive, but also
behind the scenes you were suffering.
Suffering, but also like hurting people and just being very destructive in my behaviors and trying to hide it. I remember going on this tour with my friend Jem that I met from the studio called Bongo Fury. Very few people probably know about it, but it's the studio place. You rent out rooms and stuff, and artists, you know, come together. Met him, and he ended up, a couple years after knowing him, invited me on this tour, and we put all of our money in to rent a van, set up some shows around the Northwest, and tour. We like lived in this van for a little while, and I remember going on this tour, and probably about the third show that we did, I remember getting up on stage and feeling like I'm a lie, like this is a lie, like this music is not who I really am. And it wasn't necessarily like I wanted it to be who I was, but I was just like, I'm getting up on stage and I'm performing for people, and you know, I'm preaching all this righteousness and, you know, spirituality things, but I go home and I'm a completely different person in my heart, you know, and I didn't know how to escape it. So I left the tour. And
you called off the tour?
Yeah. I didn't call off the tour necessarily, but I remember we had to stop in Yakima on the way in between shows. And during that time, I was like, I'm done. I'm leaving. And I had to go back home and figure things out because I was just dying inside. But yeah. I ended up going home, right? Going to sit on my aunt's couch and just like super depressed. And I was like, I gotta figure this out. The only way I knew how to process my emotions was through music. So I started making this music and speaking from a truer place of where I was really at. And I started to realize there's a lot of darkness in me that I have no control over. And a lot of it came from, you know, repressed mistakes that I made, or suppressed mistakes that I made. And you know, that's when I developed the moniker Sex Sale. And part of what was eating at me was the sexual addiction that I had. And I didn't know how to shake it, to be honest. And I thought this was my thought, so this is kind of a crazy thought, but I thought to myself, if I can embody this spirit of, you know, sex sales, and that's like kind of it's a plague to our culture in America, and I think it's extended in the rest of the world too, but it's very heavy in our culture in America. And I was like, this idea of over-sexualizing human beings has affected me in a way that I couldn't imagine. It's almost been personified in me, and I called it a demon, you know? And I was like, okay, if I can embody this demon and allow it to show itself in its purest, rawest form, then the world will see how messed up it is. And I was doing things in the middle of it, trying to tell stories about what happened to me and how I came to the point that I was at. But then also trying to point it out in front of the world, like, you probably hate this story. You're probably very confused about what I'm doing as an artist and, you know, allowing these emotions to be shown. But the same thing is in your heart. You know, you just don't show it. And so that was kind of my idea behind it. But it ended up taking over. It took me over to the point where I ended up doing things that I never wanted to do, you know, and the addiction got worse, and I didn't expect that. Like, I thought I had it under control. I thought, like, oh, I was gonna kill this demon in front of everybody, which sounds stupid. I'm speaking in a very, like, you know, immature way.
Sure.
But this was my thoughts at the time. It was like,
So this is when we met.
this is when we met.
Was when you were Sex Cell.
Yeah.
And I remember there being sort of like a mystery or a lure, I suppose, maybe behind like your understanding of what that was or what that meant to you, or maybe like your mission or vision as an artist.
So it's very complex to explain to people unless
Sure.
you're one-on-one like we are right now.
Yeah.
Right? So all people knew was what I was showing them, which I was trying to tell a story and paint the picture without, you know, sitting in front of the camera and giving out this whole spiel of what happened to me. I was trying to do it in an artistic way, which is like, you know, nuanced. But
So that would maybe be the next stepping stone in your artistry, would be a Sex Cell
yeah.
in the interval.
But what's interesting about that time, I was probably making some of the most creative music in my career, or what you would call a career, you know? And it was like super cool. I was like doing really cool shows, making a lot of money off merch and making really cool records, and everything seemed to be like I was headed towards success.
Did you sell out the Hawthorne Theater at Sex Cell?
No.
Not quite, but you had a
No.
great show at Hawthorne Theater.
We had a good show out, yeah, and it wasn't by only my doing. You know, we had like Dior Worthy and D-Marks and some people who are connected to the community
Shout out
who
D-Marks.
people love to come see.
Yeah.
So it wasn't only my doing, but I did do my job in bringing people there, you know.
Sure.
So, but everything was looking like I was headed towards success as an artist.
Another promising point in your artist development.
Yeah,
Really
and
promising.
even more than before.
More
which
than
was
us
interesting. Yeah, but this is something that like a lot of my friends didn't realize, is that I was in the darkest point of my life. I was being eaten alive, and you watch some of the videos from that time, like I'm literally telling the story that I'm being controlled in a sense by this demonic force, and I'm being controlled by my own desires, and they're eating me alive. And it's like, it's very evident, it's very apparent.
In the music.
Yeah, very apparent, but it gets overlooked. And I think that happens in music a lot, that happens in art a lot, where you have artists who will tell a story and pour their heart out on a record, almost in a sense crying for help, and everyone's like, oh, that's just so good, you know? It's like just the most creative expression, pure, just like so cool. And I had all my friends, you know, loved Sex Cell. They loved it so much. It was like the coolest thing they'd ever seen me do. But inside, internally, I'm literally like dying. My soul is dying.
Crazy.
Yeah, and you know, I ended up coming to a point where I reached the end of my rope and I wanted to kill myself. And that's the story of, like, if we want to talk about where I am today.
Sure, yeah.
So I met, you know, in the midst of all that, I got very suicidal to the point where, you know, I was like face to face with substances and things that like I was considering trying to harm myself. And I remember going into the bathroom one day after making a mistake sexually, that, you know, it was just like masturbating and watching porn, which is, you know, that's normal to most people.
Correct.
It's become a normal thing.
Totally.
But when I'm struggling with this deep addiction that is plaguing my life and destroying my soul, I become very sensitive to anything that is leading me closer to that direction. So I'm like trying to practice celibacy, trying to practice abstinence, and then I fall into pornography and stuff. I'm like, this is the root of this desire to reach fulfillment sexually over and over and over again without end, is the root to a lot of the bigger, grander mistakes that I've made, you know, as far as like, you know, cheating on my girlfriend and doing things to people and undermining people's value because I want a sexual release, you know, and just like stupid stuff that's destroying communities, destroying my family, destroying me internally. And so I start trying to get away from it, and then I fall back into it in a way, and it just, my soul felt like ripped from me. I felt like at this point in my life, I feel like I had a mirror in front of me and something came and just shattered it. And I could not see myself clearly anymore. You know, I'm just like looking through these broken pieces of myself, and it's just like, I don't know how to get back. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm hurting people. I'm literally, I'm the biggest hypocrite ever, you know, and I don't know what to do. And I thought it'd be just better if I kill myself, you know.
Well, I think anybody who knows the experience of addiction could probably understand what you mean, like to feel powerless.
Yeah.
It's crazy. That is a significant moment.
Yeah. So on that day, you know, I was literally getting ready to harm myself, and then I prayed for the first time since the last time that I prayed, when I said, God, if you're real, I need you to show me.
Us plus days.
Yeah, no, this was DeMarcus days.
This
was when I was like 14. That was the last time I had prayed. So now I've reached the end of my rope, and I'm like, God, this is like last call. You know, it's like I'm gonna harm myself. I'm sick of being alive, and you know what I was planning to do probably wouldn't have killed me, but it would have got me more braver to do something worse probably the next time. You know, it was just self-harm was my goal, and if I could kill myself in the process, I was all for it. And then a voice came in my head, which is interesting because if you go back to Us Plus days, it was so anti-God, anti-religion, because I was like, there's no God. You know, I asked him for help, he didn't help me. I don't believe in these religions. They're just hypocrites. They want your money. They want everything from you besides, you know, to help you. It's an industry, you know, just like anything else. But this thought came into my head and was like, go to church. And I'm like, I don't know why I would go to church.
How did it come into your head?
So I prayed. I was like, God, I don't know if you're real, but this is last call, pretty much. Like,
you speak these things out loud.
I'm getting ready to do something stupid. Yes, I'm like, you know, this is a very deep, intimate moment in my life where I'm like crying. I don't know if you ever felt just like despair, like deep despair, where you're like just emptied out completely. And I'm just like, God, I don't know if you're real, whatever. You know, it's like one of those where it's just like, I'm just done. I'm done. If you're real, this is last call. I need your help. I don't know what I need, but I need something. And that's when the thought just like literally just came. I don't have an explanation for it. In hindsight, I believe it's the Holy Spirit, you know, was put this thought in my mind, because at the time I was so anti-religion, so anti-establishment. It was not anything there's nothing in me that would be like, oh, I should probably go to church. I haven't been there in a while. I was like, no, there wasn't any of that. It was like, last thought on my mind was go to church. And the only church that I knew was the church we're in right now, Living Hope Fellowship. And I happened to live right around the corner, like 5-minute walk. And this situation happened at like 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. So it was like, get ready, go to church. It was like, boom, perfect time, perfect place kind of situation. Showed up at church in the back row by myself, of course, bawling my eyes out, just like, I felt like I was like almost like a zombie looking for like something to feed on. Like I was just like, I need anything, you know. And our pastor Jess, he's just like talking, and I still can't even remember to this day what he was saying, but it was feeding me. It was filling me up spiritually, and I started to feel a little bit of hope. And then he was like, he's like, maybe you're in here and you don't know Jesus. He's like, but you came here looking for something. I want you to just put your hand up. And I was like, if that's not exactly my sentiment, then I don't know what is. So I put my hand up, you know. I was like, I need something. I'm not gonna lie, I need something. So I came up, went to the altar. He prophesied over me, prayed over me. Still can't remember. I don't remember what's really being said. All I'm knowing is that something's happening to me internally, and I'm not going to let this go, you know? So at this point, I'm still sex sale when I go home. You know, everyone knows me as sex sale still. I go home and I have a house full of homies, you know, all artists, one sleeping in my garage, one sleeping on the couch, one sleeping up in the room, and we're all like, you know, having these fat studio sessions, making clothes, you know, recording music, making beats all day, and it's like everything's moving, and I'm just have no desire for it anymore. I was like, this is burnt out. Like, whatever I experienced this morning at church, and whoever this Jesus is, that's giving me so much more than what this is giving me. So I was like burnt out on it. I was like, I don't want this anymore. I'm trying to change things up because this is not it. And so go back to church the next Sunday. Homie gives me a Bible and I start reading it. And as I'm reading it, the words are flying like off the page and into my heart. Like it's almost insane the way. And you know, going back, I've done a lot of psychedelics, right? I've done like DMT, one of the most, you know, crazy hyper spiritual substances that, you know, is mentioned. Crazy experiences, but none of them had the depth and the spiritual liberation. None of them gave me anything compared to what I was experiencing just through reading scripture and praying.
So that's crazy to me, because I've certainly had my experiences with psychedelics, like deep ones, crazy ones. And there's something to be said about the spiritual liberation, personally, that I felt.
It bears mentioning.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. So you're saying, regardless, this is like it because I mean, some of those psychedelic experiences are crazy. So you're saying this, like the word really, it's hard for me to envision, you know.
Well, the thing about it is like, the psychedelic experiences are, they leave, they're fleeting, you know, and you can hold on, you can try and grasp, you know, the knowledge that you stumble upon as your mind is, you know, racing in this astral, metaphysical kind of way. You can try and grasp onto it, but the thing about the experience I was having with Jesus and praying before him and reading about him and reading about, it was like almost like I was reading my own soul, and that's kind of like a weird way of saying it, but that's how it registers. It's like I felt like I was seeing the truth for the first time, and it didn't leave me after 6 hours. Like I would wake up on fire, go to sleep on fire, wake up on fire, go to sleep on fire, and I was on no substances. So I was like, this is crazier than this is. I'm having revelation after revelation in the same kind of vein as, you know, the revelations that you'll have on psychedelic experience, where it's like, boom, I get it now. But you know, when you do psychedelics and stuff, you have that kind of enlightenment, and then, you know, the world picks up and you kind of stumble back into the old way of thinking or whatever. You might hold on to a little bit, but it doesn't become fruit. It doesn't manifest in the way you walk out your life necessarily. But these scriptures were having incredible effect on who I was and the way I viewed the world, and it was transforming me internally. And I felt like all the baggage that I was carrying from the past, the sexual addiction, the shame of being a hypocrite, all these things was like gone, and I could actually walk into who I felt like I'm actually supposed to be, who I was trying to be the whole time, essentially. It's like, I can actually walk out in this, and it has nothing to do with me. You know, it's not like I can claim anything and be like, oh, well, I read the Bible and I worked my hardest to get this knowledge, and so I have the right to, you know, brag about how spiritual I am now. You know, there was no self-righteousness to be had. It was just incredible, deep transformation that I give it all to Jesus. I couldn't have done on my own, and I felt finally free to actually walk out the life that I wanted, that I was trying to live the whole time, you know.
Amazing.
So I'm done making music at that point. And all I wanted was Jesus. That's all I wanted.
So all your homies, you said you're at your crib, you had things going, you're at the peak of your artistic success commercially, let's say, maybe not so much personally.
Mm-hmm.
You had to break that news to people, like, no more.
Yeah, so we were all like, so all these dudes were living with me, my girlfriend, all in this condo, and this all happened in like June.
What, 2019? Okay.
So this all happened in June 2019, and our lease is up in August. So I'm having to make a decision. Do I continue to surround myself around these things that I don't have any desire to be a part of? And me and my girlfriend are sleeping together at the time, and we're living this lifestyle that is like just not who I feel like God is calling me to be. I'm sensing it deep in my spirit. Like I'm uncomfortable walking through my own house, and like I feel completely like I feel a disconnect from the life that I had established, and everything around me was just not. I was like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not what I'm supposed to do. So when August came, I was like, I had to break it to my friends and even to my girlfriend. I was like, I'm going my own way. I'm doing something else, and I feel like this is good. This is good for me, but it wasn't received very well,
I can imagine.
People relied on me kind of, and relied on the place we had to stay. But I had to leave, and I gave up everything. I told my girlfriend to go live with her mom in San Diego. Told my friends, like, I don't know what you're gonna do. It wasn't like I was like rude about it in any way. I was just like, this is what I have to do. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Gotta do something else. We can't get another lease here. And I pretty much forfeited everything I had, gave up everything. And it was interesting because that same week, the church invited me to be a leader at this camp. And so it was like a week before our lease was up and we had to leave. So when I went to the camp for like 5 days, and I knew when I came back to the camp, I was gonna be without my girlfriend, my friends were gonna leave, I was gonna be homeless, and I had no job. And my passion for music was gone. And then again, I'm sitting there with no identity, but I did have a new identity, and that was I was a child of God, and that was everything to me. And that's all I need. I felt like I finally had a glimpse of like all this stuff that I'm pursuing, all these desires, all this stuff. It means nothing,
Crazy. Like
it's cool for the time being. It makes people happy, it's liberating or whatever, but it ultimately means nothing for my soul. It doesn't fulfill me in the way that Jesus is fulfilling me, is feeding me, deeply.
Totally.
So yeah, came home homeless.
So that would be like the death of sex sale, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay.
By far. Yeah.
And then that was, you said, about August of 2019.
This was about,
Okay.
August 2019.
You haven't put any music out since?
No. So during this time, and of course, like I'm doing this interview now because I'm getting ready to start releasing the music that I've been working on. But I stopped making music for about 9 months.
Not even touching it?
Not even touching it, not even considering it. Like it was the last thought in my mind. I was like, I guess I'm not an artist anymore. Like I don't care about this stuff.
It wasn't like a conscious, like, I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to take some time to myself and I'm going to return to it.
I had no desire for it. I had no desire for it.
You thought it was over. You thought, really?
Yeah, and I completely stopped doing it. And then one day, I remember like thinking about it. I was like, I wonder if I'd still be able to write a verse. I was like, because it's been a while, and I was like, I love rapping, and so I was like, I wonder if I'd still be able to write. It's been so long. And so I sat down and I wrote a verse, and I was like, this is kind of fire. I was like, and so I was like, okay, God, you've given me a talent. I recognize this, and it started to kind of like resaturate my brain. Like, okay, I can do something with this music. this is not for nothing. You know, I've been giving it. I started to see it as a gift more so. I was like, I've been given this gift. I think I should do something with it, God. What do you want me to do? And I was like, if you want me to do something with this, I need you to put the passion back in me, because I look at this life and I don't want it. You know, if I'm gonna do it, I want to do it for you, and I want to do it in a different way than I was doing it before. And slowly but surely, I started, you know, having the desire to start working on music again. And I was like, okay, and it was by faith at the end of the day. As I'm working on music, I'm still like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, but I'm pretty much writing to God. Like, my songs are becoming therapy for me again. And I'm using them to worship God. I'm using them to understand God. And I was like, I think I could do something with this. And all of a sudden the desire started coming back. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make a whole bunch of music, and I'm gonna give it to you, and you're gonna tell me what to do with it.
Were you hesitant because it was, for the most of your career, was associated with the type of living that you were no longer interested in?
I wasn't, only because I knew that what I was doing now was different. I knew that I wasn't gonna go out into the world the same way that I was going out before, where it was like for me. Like, you know, I didn't tell anybody really that I was working on music again. It was just like, I'm gonna make these songs, and then if you want to do something with them, you gotta set it up. Because I'm not just gonna be like out there trying to self-promote again and be the coolest artist and, you know, stand on stage to just perform for people. Like, if we're gonna do this, then it's gotta be for your glory, and to help bring transformation to the hearts of man, you know.